Folks, welcome, welcome, welcome. We are very delighted to be here. Very delighted to have you. What is new? What's going on, folks? How are you doing? And where are you at? That's my big question for today. How are you doing and where are you at? Folks, very excited to be here with you. It's been a very lots happening weekend kind of thing. Hey, David A. from Kenya. Lovely to see you here. What is that? Nairobi. Lovely. Sounds wonderful. Rory coming from Kingston, Ontario. Welcome, Rory. So we fully deconstructed our whole setup, the entire stream, because we had to take it down because of the, I mentioned the journey was sort of taking place exactly right here. Hello, Rachel from Toronto. Lovely. We got a heavy contingency from Canada here. Got to see if our folks from other places are gonna win this fight, or if it's just gonna be Canada kicking ass all the way. Here we are. So yes, we fully deconstructed the entire stream setup, and what that's meant is that I've got to rearrange a little bit. So this might be the new sort of thing, although not quite sure. So folks, where else? From Bed-Stuy, Ralph, good to see you. Good to see you. Glad to have you here. Sorry, just plugging in our decorative chromatic mechanisms. Lovely, lovely. So what else? What else, folks? I like that lighting wise. Isn't that sort of nice? Okay, let's see here. Nick in Karlstad, Sweden. Nice to meet you. Feels like I've been here before. I know, right? Seems familiar in some ways. Folks, it is just such a delight to be back here. You know, I think one of the great things about the live stream and doing it so often is that it really does feel like it's very sort of integrated into my life, sort of woven into my life's experience. And I get to see you folks. So it's nice that, you know, like we named our plant here Nick, because Nick has been such a kind supporter for so long. And of course, that's Nick was named after the plant. It was actually the other way around, but that's, you know, we appreciate that generally. Liz from sunny New Mexico. I love that. It's just like Mexico, but a little newer, a little shinier in that way. So it's so great, you know, get to see Nick, get to see Ralph, get to see Rory and Rachel, and to get to see everybody and to hang out a little bit. And I think that maybe I overlook that part to some degree, even though that's in my mind it's so central. It's just the fact that, like, we're here hanging out, we get to chill, we get to chit chat like kitty cats, and spend a little time together. And I appreciate folks spending their time because yeah, we all make choices. Nate, welcome. Happy Monday. Good to see you. It's funny, the last stream I labeled Mindful Monday incorrectly. It was actually Freaky or Freedom Friday. And lo and behold, it's Monday again. I realized I didn't have to change the name today, although today is the post Psychedelic Journey report. And yeah, we're generally going to talk about that and also get into your questions generally. So I haven't not talked to anyone aside from my wife about the wife and the doctor about the process. So you'll be the very first to hear about it, which is exciting for me. What else? Where are folks coming from? Oh, here's a question for the folks coming from YouTube, David and Ralph. Which YouTube? Is it the main YouTube channel or is it the second YouTube channel? Because we've been broadcasting on every channel like that we have, Facebook and Twitch and everything, and we're going to be cutting them down, but we don't know because there's two. We have two YouTubes. Two YouTubes. Oh, I didn't know how to reply feature. I could reply to someone specifically. Oh my God, I can tag people. I didn't realize that. I can tag David or tag anyone. It's lovely. Huh. Interesting. Nice feature. Good to know. Okay. So, lovely. So, folks, we're going to do a little meditation today. I'm excited because this is the first guided meditation I've done since the psychedelic journey yesterday. And what that means for me is that I'm actually going to be guiding kind of what I need, which is always fun because often people find that useful for themselves, which is a nice universal feeling. Why is my puppy whining? Is she just whining because she wants attention? Yeah, she just wants attention. That's okay. Puppies like attention. Okay, let's see. Ralph says, I'm not sure I get an alert when this starts and it just pops up. I'm not sure I get an alert. I'm curious how you found it then today, where you just happened to be on YouTube and you sort of scrolled through at that moment. If you want an alert, P.S. Two things. One is if you want alerts, you can get them. You can go to twitch.tv and hit the follow thing and select your alert level. On YouTube, if you hit the bell icon for our channel, and then you can pick how many alerts you want. Do you want all the alerts recommended? Do you want minimal alerts, less recommended, that kind of thing? Excellent. Okay, folks. So I'm excited to do a little meditation today, as per usual, and then afterwards we'll jump into your questions and we'll jump into all the other stuff, all the good stuff. Okay, let's see here. Nick says, was there a pre-trip stream as well? Yes, there was. Must have missed that. That was the last one. That was Friday, unless I somehow fantasized that happened and I was totally wrong. But yes, there was, and we just talked about basically the prelude to that and my previous, my previous journeys. One day we'll figure out this frozen camera problem. But right now we just have to click a button. Yeah, so that was the last stream, and I talked about sort of what was what my previous journey sort of focused on. And this one's very intense, and I'll get into it, but it was less psychedelic than it was sort of emotional. Very emotional, very intense emotion. And some interesting stuff related to the body and sort of body consciousness, and I think some interesting stuff that'll apply to our practice. So folks, let's find a nice comfortable position that we can maintain for the duration of the sit. You know what's missing is the bell. We used it for the ceremony and now it is MIA. Okay, I'm going to be back in 10 seconds. If anyone wanders in and is very confused, just let them know. Let them know that I'm never coming back. Okay, I found a second bell, a different one we don't usually use, and then I realized as I returned the bell is right behind me, disguised, camouflaged. How do folks like this new hanging, this new rug that we popped up here? This is oh, David, it's on Deep Mindfulness 2. Not sure how you got there. Well, great. Well, you probably hit alerts. You probably signed up for Deep Mindfulness 2 to see restreams, and then you it gave you some alerts when we went live. Should have left the hat. Which hat? Which hat are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. Do you guys remember this bell? I don't know if you remember this from your travels. If you've been on streams for some time, this is the bell we used to use, and I spent months. I don't know, because it's going to go out of focus if I get close. I spent months working on this bell because it just looked too new when I got it, and it was just like whatever. But very hard to get this green patina. It's not paint. It's actually a molecular change in the metal, all this stuff, and to have a beautiful pattern that looks like marble eyes and stuff that took forever. You have to put it in different kinds of salts and acids and things and see what happens and then start again. And I'm no expert at this. And then I finally was like, yes, we got it exactly where we want it. And the sound was so far away from where I wanted it to be. So it's just very funny. So I started using the other bell. Okay, so Rosalind, welcome. Rosalind is our surrealist commentator, or at times can be. Please explain in 2 minutes why running causes heart disease. I'll explain those during the silent 2 minutes of the meditation. We'll go over that then. Nick says, oh, Nate's comment above. Yeah, exactly. I should have left the hat. Okay, folks. So find a nice, comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. This is going to be an ASMR. Let's get both microphones in here. A little on the left, a little on the right. But I don't think I have this set up in stereo, so it's probably all mono for you. Would that be enjoyable, or would that be like the most creepy thing? I'm going to vote for the most creepy thing, is to have this some weird whispery. It's actually really bad for your throat to whisper. I'm sure you all know that. Okay, folks, so finding a nice, comfortable position that you can maintain for the duration of the sit. If you're new to meditation, we're going to be meditating for about 25 minutes, and if that sounds crazy, impossible, just know that it is highly possible, and it'll probably go by much faster than you think. And we will begin. Beginning by taking a few comfortable deep breaths and just feeling the body rise and fall. For this process, I'm going to encourage us to stay as grounded in the body as possible. This simply means allowing body sensation to be more prominent than other particular sensations. I'd like us to imagine, rather than we are looking down at the body, if you notice, if you tilt your head down a little, there's a sense that there's a body outlaid below us. Rather, let's observe and experience that the body is looking up at us. As we relax the body, just piece by piece letting any part of the body that needs to let go or might be able to let go further, just letting it let go. often in our practice and in life, different parts of our experience will tell us that they're more or less important, more or less significant, more or less primary. And we're going to return to the experience that the body is primary. The body is the center of our universe. It's the body that all of this sense activity is happening to. Allowing a little bit of selfing activity, just letting the body be self. As opposed to the self that we usually experience behind the eyes or in the head. Cultivating a body self. Times we'll be drawn spatially into where we often associate self, into the head, around the eyes, the upper part of the chest, and just letting that go. Letting the silent, ongoing sensations of the body be me. Of course, this is something we need to cultivate. We may notice it for an instant and it may fade away. Again, just returning. even if we seem stuck in an above position, as though we're looking down at the body. Just letting that mind, letting that spatial orientation sink and settle into the body, like the body with a container. Because the space of the body doesn't have mental audio, doesn't have the voice that we might hear in the head. We might notice that the body is much quieter. So as we listen to the body, listen to ourselves, we might ask the body, what is it that you have to say? And the answer might simply be silence. We might ask the body, please, if you will, give me your important message. And then simply listen to the silence. And we can allow our awareness, when holding the sensations of the body, allow the body to be the primary sense. The primary medium through which we notice any other sense activity, as though we hear the world through the body. Letting the sensations of the body be that which sees the world. This might sound strange or abstract, might be difficult or confusing. That's okay, just allow the intuition of the body to guide this process. Now we're going to make a shift. Still from the position of the body. I'd like us to see if we can find the part of us that doesn't feel like it's good enough. Again, looking for body sensation. The part that feels either through emotion or tension. That it's not good enough. Perhaps that it's weak, that it's lost, confused. And this is the part that arises when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel isolated or alone. And this may be more or less intense for some people. So if at any point you need to pause, being sure to do so. This part that might feel more vulnerable, potentially less worthy, can often be associated with old emotion. Somatically held emotion felt deep in the body, these very stable, contractive sensations. And often, in order for this part of us to exist, there's often another part the part that judges it. You're not good enough. This internal voice that tries to push this part away, that tries to make this more vulnerable part be invisible. The part that feels that if we show this vulnerable part, especially in public or socially, that we'll experience pain or rejection. So there's the part that feels alienated or isolated or alone or lost. And there's the part that has aversion to that. I don't want that. I want that part to be gone. The mind may struggle to find these parts, but let the body show us. The part that feels vulnerable, noticing where that is. And if we're struggling to find the part that wants it to be gone, that judges or pushes it away, we can give that part a voice. We can allow that judging part to say something like, I don't want you to be here. I want you to go away. And recognizing that whatever parts are arising for you, whether it's the ones I'm describing or some other part, gathering a sense of these and allowing a dialogue to develop. Letting the part that wants the vulnerable part to be gone, letting it speak. I don't want you to be here. Perhaps I'm afraid, or it's too frightening. It's too painful. And then embodying the other part and let it respond. Noticing if these parts are antagonistic. They don't like each other. Just allowing this dialogue to develop for a few moments. Knowing that it can be very simple. The vulnerable part might simply say, please, I just need care. I feel lost. And the other part might say, but I don't want you to be here. Just letting the two have their voice. Noticing if even producing the dialogue makes one part expand. Creates more tension. It's possible that these parts have never been able to converse before. Although they've been locked in a kind of battle. And staying with stillness, staying with the practice, allowing a tiny bit of light to enter the eyes. Again, not exiting the practice, simply adding the seeing experience, letting the body see the world. And for a moment considering, what are the motives of these different selves? What is the wholesome need which called them to come into existence, to self-create? And seeing if perhaps it's protection. Taking a moment to soak into how compassionate each of these parts is. Trying to keep us protected from fear, safe from feeling vulnerable. And if we can, soaking into the generosity, the vigilance of these parts. And allowing a few moments to let the larger self, the one that can contain all of these experiences, all of our sensing, let that respond. Letting this third voice say what needs to be said. Perhaps it's, I hear you. Or thank you. Or perhaps it simply says, you can finally rest. You can finally rest. And we'll end the formal practice when the bell goes silent. Letting this moment here built out of the momentum of this practice. Letting this be the great teacher that shows us how we might bring this practice into every aspect of our life. So what was that like? So Will Alexander says, have you talked about your experience yet? Well, I have not. And yet, at the same time, haven't I? So that was a interesting practice, which I've never exactly guided before. But aside from the fact that the last part around recognizing the motives of these different selves pushing and pulling, that was much more of the journey than it was in the meditation proportionally. Although a lot of the journey that I went through was exactly what we went through in the guided meditation. So keep in mind that this is quite a personal experience, so you may have been entirely confused by and totally alienated from what I was describing. Hopefully there's some degree of universality to it. So making any adjustments you need to allow the body to be comfortable. And what we're going to do is we're going to open ourselves right up to questions, and also if people would like to, this is going to be a little tricky today, is the Zoom. Wait, why did it not post? Okay, one sec, let me make sure this, I'm going to try this one more time. Whoa, the command didn't work. Okay, I'm going to open and then post the link to the Zoom. Especially in terms of us like hanging out and chatting, I find that the Zoom is quite useful. Oh boy, it's going to make you do the whole thing. Okay, I'm putting the whole... Wait, nothing I'm posting is going into the... That's so weird. So it looks like... Tell me if this is correct, folks. No matter what I post, it doesn't appear in the chat below. Is that right? No one's seeing anything I'm posting? Okay, I'm going to crash the chat. So pause on typing anything in the chat for just a moment. So Nate says, the feeling of my body came from my spine and my neck. Very interesting insights. Interesting to hear about. Okay, so I'm crashing the chat on my end, so I can't see anything you're going to put down here for a minute. I'm going to restart it and see what happens. Can't even share links. Okay, let's see if this works now. All right. Okay, that worked. So then that means I need to open Zoom. Okay, there we go. Got to get this monitor closer. Oh yeah, it's very high tech. Got monitors and all sorts of things happening over here. Very fancy. So feel free to jump on if you want to chat about your experience. I can answer questions more directly slated for or directly shaped for what's happening to you. But if not, feel free to let me know what the experience is like, what happened, and what you are like now. So what was that practice like? Was it totally confusing and were you entirely lost? That was my concern doing it. It was so specific that folks might have been either lost or just not identify with it, and it's just not their experience, so that was not available. There's some assumptions there that we had a part that maybe felt less worthy, that we had a part that felt less worthy, that we were able to locate the part that sort of internalized that sort of lack of worth, that it would sort of push back, which is typically, I think, if we have a part that feels like, oh God, I'm like not good enough in these X, Y, and Z ways, typically that means internally there's another part that's saying, pushing against that to create that kind of dynamic. So not only could you detect those, but then you could sort of allow yourself to give them voice, that kind of thing. So yeah, let me know what happened in your experience. What on earth occurred? As I often say, very difficult for me to know your experience unless you tell me. Exactly. So, folks, I'm going to start chit-chatting here about my journey experience. And though I still want to hear your comments, so actually my thought was I would get any comments or reports on the meditation, what that was like, what happened, what you're like now, and then we jump into the conversation. But no press, folks. Beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop. Yeah, we got a bunch of people here watching. Welcome, folks. If you're new here, P.S., please hit that follow button because that makes it possible for us to give you updates when we go live. Or we have this fantasy of doing a 24-hour guided meditation, which I doubt anyone would be able to attend all of, but I thought that'd be really fun, is just continuously guide all day and all night. Just work through that, sort of the pain of that. We also had this idea, which I'm still very reticent to do because my system is like, I don't want the pain. There's an artist who does Daniel, I forget his last name, but he does something called Sits and Smiles, and he just sits in front of a camera live stream and just sits and smiles, cross-legged in the corner, I think almost with no cushion maybe, and he just is still smiling at the camera for 4 hours. And I don't think people understand that, like, sitting still for 1 hour is remarkably painful, and so the fact that he can do it for that many hours is like, I mean, I've sat still. I think my top time is like 6 hours without moving anything, but it's painful. A lot of what you're dealing with is intense pain. So Rory says, a bit lost, but you did suggest that would be okay. I could detect the unworthy places. But earlier I couldn't figure out how to view from the body. Yeah, I think that part of what we're doing in that part of the meditation was toying with and playing a little bit with the system will tend to identify. It'll tend to identify with different experiences. It'll identify with the head, or it'll identify with an emotion or something like that. It'll push and pull. So it'll push and pull in those ways, but it'll tend to identify somewhere or with something. Sometimes we can identify externally. We can be like, oh, this thing, that's me. Don't hit that thing, that's me. And the sort of mind will wrap around this as being the center of the world. And if somebody gets too close to my object or my motorcycle or whatever, the system gets all fired up. So identification can be shifted around. So we were essentially toying with letting the system identify with the body being primary. Like, I'm the main character here, versus the head and the sort of where we often associate self, which is often related to the mind. Now, I think that's different for different people. For sure. I tend to be a more sort of head-centered type. Not to say that's better. That's just sort of where my system lands. Well, thank you, Veritable Vagabond. That's 6. At the same time, Raquel was doing it right next to me. She was sitting a few seats away. This is at a retreat, and she did 8 hours, which I was very impressed by. And that was like, we're both sort of seeing how long we could possibly go. And excuse me. And so on retreats, you're not supposed to have contact or sort of talk to each other or something like that. But I knew that Raquel had missed all of the meals because of that. She sat through lunch and dinner and lunch. And so, feeling like proud of her, etc., I just went and made a plate of food and wrapped it in plastic and then put it on her shoes, which was sort of like, you're not really supposed to do, but it was still like, I don't know. Sometimes I break the rules, man. Fighting the law. But I don't do those extended sits that much anymore. I just find I just practice in other ways. Okay, so let's see. Jamler says, felt very angry and frustrated. Also experienced a lot of boredom. Interesting. Had to lay down and relax in order to continue to meditate. Okay, so Jamler, I just want to point out here, this could just be ordinary run-of-the-mill boredom. Nothing specific, nothing, doesn't matter. Just some material that arises. But if this kind of practice is interesting, what I'd encourage you to do is look at, is that boredom part of the pushback? what can happen is we have contact with this particular part, especially the part that feels less worthy, and the system will be like, "Oh no, 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 we're not talking about that. That's too intense. You know, we don't do that." And it will have this pushback come in the form of any number of things. It could be just distraction. It could be boredom. It could be anxiety. It could be unconsciousness. We just sort of go unconscious and drift away. And it's helpful to know that that might be the pushback. And so know that might be the other self that is pushing back and saying, I don't really like this self. And just check in and say, is there a part of me that like doesn't, so sort of like, ugh, like this self, ugh, I don't like that self. And that's part of why I wanted to, typically we either make these parts invisible or they become naturalized, where the part that we don't like, we're just like, oh, I don't even want to think about you. Just stop existing. If I were a good person, you wouldn't exist. And, you know, or if I'm a better person, then I could be over here, this kind of thing. And then the part that's saying that, it's like, oh, just stop existing. We often naturalize that and make that sort of invisible, because that's the right one, the one that just wants that part to just be gone. And so it's hard sometimes to see that as a part, as a self that just is trying to create, trying to keep us safe. And at first it can be quite a lot of turmoil to sort of get these parts to even know that they exist, or to observe that they exist. But what I was pointing to at the end, I think, is maybe the more significant part of this whole practice, is to recognize the motive of either one of these selves, which typically in one way or another is to protect us, is to keep us safe. Even the self that's like, this is stupid, I don't want this part to be here, the rejecting part, which might also, for me, the experience is it rejects outwards too, it rejects inwards, and then when it sees those kind of qualities out in the world, it's like, blah, I don't like that, get away from me. And that part is sort of pushing and pulling on reality as well. Part of the premise is to recognize that both of these parts are there to support us, are there to keep us safe, but they don't have a real clear view of the whole system. So they view it from their limited purview. One part says, like, I'm lost, and this is, again, these are these specific parts where you have a lot of different parts and a lot of different pieces. So there's the part that's like, I'm lost, I can't do anything, please help me. Like that's something I have in my experience. And it doesn't recognize that there are other parts. It just feels lost, and because of this, it just goes into kind of a panic. And there's this other part that's like, oh, that's pathetic. Like, why are you so vulnerable? This is stupid. Why aren't you just like, be better? Why don't you make this part go away? Like, this other part is also there to protect me and just wants safety, but it just sees the vulnerable part as like, ugh, like it's so painful, and just stop existing. It's just such a pain in the ass. So those parts can't navigate each other. However, there is something which can navigate all of these, and that's that kind awareness. So if we even notice the parts, it's likely that we're going to have to bring in this kind awareness, even if we don't know that that's what's happening. We can also come to it from the other side, is develop that kind awareness, and then from there go in and observe these different parts as they negotiate and navigate each other. That would be my general suggestion. Veritable Vagabond says, do you think chakras are legit? You have 3 things here, so I'm just going to read them all. My skin is way too itchy for that. I'm not sure which part, but we'll see. Is boredom a real emotion? So we're going to define, I'm going to go backwards here. We're going to define emotion as anything that the body-mind labels as emotional, which is a intentionally vague definition, because people get very hung up, like, is it emotional? Is it not? If you have any taste of equanimity, which is just really, really deep neutrality, where there's no reading whatsoever, no assessment of reality of any kind, our emotion is coloring everything. And if you get very sensitive to this, you can look around a room and observe different colors or different objects and watch the body, the system pushing and pulling physically in the body, actually just like very subtle, like yes, no, 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 yes, want, not want, this kind of thing. So boredom, I would just say in a generic way, sure, boredom is absolutely an emotion. And it's an aversive emotion. I don't want this. I want this to be gone, and I imagine that there is something else I'm not even sure what it is, or maybe I know exactly what it is, but this would be good. So what it's evaluating the experience as is, this is bad, away, bad, get away. And then it's maybe at the same time going, good, come to me, right? So it's pushing and pulling on the world. And so, yeah, just to accept that that's natural, that's going to happen. Bloody Dior says, what's your thoughts? Oh, wait, I didn't answer all your questions. Do I think chakras are legit? So what I would say is there's a pie of perception. This imaginary pie has everything in it that we could possibly perceive, every possible thing a human could perceive in any given moment, right? We can slice that pie in a number of different ways. One of those ways is through the lens of chakras, which I'm not very versed in, and some people have much clearer relationship to. Not my background. And for a long time I was like, oh, that's BS, I don't believe in it. But I do think, and anytime anyone is really deep into a sort of set of practices, it's likely the case that it's coming out of their experience. They're not just making it up. So I think that some people can have the experience that there are these sort of energy centers, which makes a lot of sense in terms of emotion, that sometimes it can feel like they're sort of blocked up or they're more radiant or this kind of thing, which makes sense in terms of emotion being very flowing and active, or just sensations or energy in the body being sort of more active. And I use the word energy in a pretty literal way, like when we're very tired, the body has less energy. When we drink too much caffeine, the body has too much energy, just like energy in the body, and people noticing that it sort of seems to gather in certain places, and then learning to move around that energy in the body. And again, once I start talking about energy and moving around energy, it seems like so mystical, schmystical, like BS, that I'm just like, oh God, like, please, like, kill me. However, I want to just say in a respectful way that I've had the experience of literally moving energy in the body, and it was so weird. And I was like, this goes against my sort of atheistic, skeptical thing, but I noticed the sort of tingly sensations in the palm of my hand. It sort of got very active. I could really pay attention to it. And then I noticed if I held my sort of awareness to include my hand and the neutral area in my, forearm, the sensation would just spread out. And I was like, well, this is strange. And then if I noticed that sensation, including the rest of my arm, the sensation would spread out. And I was like, this is strange. So I'm actually literally, moving energy around my body. And I was like, oh, this might be sort of the realm that people are talking about in terms of chakras and that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on Rupert's spirit? I like Rupert's spirit from afar. I know a tiny bit of his work. I'm no authority of any kind. People I respect him quite a bit. So I think it's a pretty good shot, if you don't know anything about him, to check him out. There's some really excellent guidance and tech on jhana and concentration practice, that kind of thing. So that's my general take on Rupert Spira. So let's see here, folks. Okay, here we roll. Okay. So I wanted to talk about my very recent yesterday. Actually, what time is it? I think it was less than 24 hours basically ago. My psychedelic experience, which was guided by a professional guide. This guide happened to be a doctor. That's not to say that all guides need to be doctors, but this guide happened to be a doctor and was also significantly trained in this kind of practice. And I was pretty reticent to talk about the particular medicine because my concern was that people would get too hooked onto the medicine and say, okay, well, I want that experience, so I've got to experiment with that particular medicine. But I'm going to talk about it specifically today. And I also want to also mention that I'm highly skeptical of recommending substances other than meditation to almost anyone. And even that, I have some reservations in certain cases. Because it's really not right for everybody, and it's not a right fit. And it's also, there's an incredibly dramatic distance from what something's like being guided with someone and doing it on our own recreationally without a significantly sort of a trained guide. So the experience yesterday, so I'm going to talk about the substance itself again. If saying the substance makes your mind perk up and say, ooh, I want to try that one, or something like that, just consider talking to someone who's a pro and let them decide, because I did not pick the substance. I would have probably picked something very different had I chosen, but I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I just listened to the advice of the guide. So this was a journey on MDMA, and the way it worked was I met with them. They actually were here in our home, which is why we had to deconstruct the entire stream setup. And what occurred? Okay, so I asked Raquel to be there, and they said that was fine. Raquel could be there. So the basic setup was we set up a place for myself to lie down on the floor. We talked about intentions and talked about things that I was, working on psychologically, emotionally, etc. I mentioned this in the last stream, but a lot of what I've been working on is this experience of shame in the body-mind. I also mentioned on the last stream that usually teachers don't talk so much about their own internal landscape, but I don't think that's bad, but I do want to say that I think there could be something valuable about talking about it from this lens. So I am a human being. I haven't transcended being human yet. I haven't met anyone who has. If you have met that person, please let me know. I'd like to talk to them. I'm sure they wouldn't like to talk to me because they wouldn't like or dislike anything. So that was the general setup. Talking about intentions. So the intention that I had was this experience of this sort of shame, that there's some part of me that is just flawed and just if you just change and go away, I would finally be free and I could finally, do all these things I want to do. That's one of the things that I find is that I want to do X thing. I have these ambitious plans, and then the system gets overwhelmed and gets knocked out. So it ends up being like I just, need to lay down or this kind of thing. And I've had significant movement through all of this with meditation. That's really been the primary tool that I've used to work through a lot of this stuff, along with support through therapy and all the other means. But just this part that's like not good enough. So we talked about that as an intention. I talked about that on the previous journey to answer Bloody Dior's question. That what came up was there was this sort of inner child kind of thing, this like little boy who experienced a lot of violence and a lot of trauma at the hands of others and at the neglectful hands of others as a child, and that it was very confused and very hurt and very like the world is so confusing. And there was this sort of part that was there that felt very isolated as well. So this was the previous guided journey, which was it was over the course of 3 days, and there's 2 journeys. So, and to give a little context, I've had a fair amount of experience with taking psychedelics self-prescribed effectively for recreational purposes. But this was very, very different. This is very, because it's so structured and because it's with someone who is a guide, it's, like I said, I've had I'd say I'm pretty darn experienced with psychedelics, and this was so different experientially, so different to the point where, having had experience with MDMA before, afterwards I was like, maybe that was fake, or maybe it was something else or whatever, and then sort of over time realizing, okay, it was the same thing, but it was to the point where it felt like a completely different thing. Part of the setup is that the guiding setup is that I'm laying down and I have whatever degree of sensory deprivation that I want, but the recommended one is that the eyes are covered and that I was under a weighted blanket. That was my choice. Some people don't like that, but I was under a weighted blanket. And the first journey, double journey that I did a number of months ago, was one where I didn't move at all. I barely, and then at one point I shifted a centimeter. This one was much more physically active, and the body kept feeling like it was wanting to go through these convulsions and move. I mean, I was relatively still for the 5-hour period. And part of the setup is also that Raquel was sitting by my side, and the guide was sitting by my side on the other side. And at any point I could reach out for them, or I could say something or ask a question, or this kind of thing. And that was what happened. A couple times I reached out early on. I reached out to Raquel and held her hand. And she has a thing that we do in our, part of our relationship, is she knows that often I'll want my hand, someone to rub my hand, which actually regulates the system quite a bit. It feels very affectionate, so the system cools out. So a couple times I'd reach out for her, and then at some point I just reached out to both of them, was holding both of their hands, and that was probably the last entire half of the entire journey was that. The guide at certain points would prompt me and say, hey, you talked about this intention before. What's going on with that, to sort of steer the experience. And that's another thing that is significant about it being guided, is that you go in with one intention. And of course, using a hallucinogen, you can go in a million different directions. You can go, thoughts about this, or deconstructing, or self, what's the word I'm looking for? Becoming, ethereal, or whatever direction you want to go. You can just let the medicine take you whatever direction it wants. But this is different because you're efforting to stay within the bracket of your intention wherever it takes you, but there's still the sense of, okay, I'm still going down this channel. Now that channel could go in any direction at all. Sometimes the medicine just takes you and sort of puts you into something that you don't have the capacity to intend. But typically, you're just, ideally you're returning back to this intention. Hello, frozen camera. So, let's see here. Okay, that does it. Have I tried self-inquiry? So yes, I've done quite a bit of self-inquiry meditation practice in general. And there is a similarity here, although it's a little less abstract, because it is, in a way, we're looking at a constellation of self. So constellation of self that I've navigated the world through many times, a sort of self that's struggled, or a self that feels embattled, or a self that feels vulnerable. So it's less, what is, when I do self-inquiry, it's often a question on the experiencing of reality, like, what is this? Or am I really seeing this, or hearing this, or feeling this? Or it's just tracking the level of knowing and not knowing in the mind at any given point. So that is that. I'm going to turn off Zoom because no one's here and it's making the camera go goofy. So, okay, that's the general setup of the physical experience that occurred. That's a sort of general breakdown. And then at some point during that period, I also began with dialogue, which was surprising because the first time I did the journey, which is a different medicine actually, there was no talking, because any movement of any kind would sort of pull you out of the experience. So that was that experience. Again, I find myself being very reticent to talk about the particular medicines, in part because, these people can get these on the street, and the distance between it being guided and doing it alone is so dramatic that I wouldn't want anyone to experiment with these substances without a guide, honestly, unless you're very familiar with your own recreational sort of substance use. But again, I almost consider them different categories, just completely different categories. I mean, if we think about it, I've personally taken psilocybin before, not something I'm unfamiliar with by any means. That said, there are these studies that were done, not that long ago, with people who are terminal cancer patients, and they take the psilocybin, they're guided, and they break through their very significant fear of death, and they're like, okay, cool, death is coming, death is part of my life, and that's just what it is. I've never had that experience. Like, I've had some experiences of facing my own mortality, but mostly it's been like, oh wow, like this is strange and cool experiment. So with that, I just want to almost consider it like two different worlds, as recreational use and non-recreational use. So with that, I want to say that the first two journeys I did some time ago, it wasn't this year, but it feels like a long time ago, was using ketamine, which is legal in much of the states, and there's actually more and more services that are guiding people through ketamine. One of the dangers is that ketamine has a narcotic quality, and it can easily become addictive. And I remember when taking it, there was part of my system that was like, oh, please just let me have the rest of this substance again, which is, something you want to watch out for, which is why they do it days apart. And then they're like, don't do it again for a long time. Someone's asking a question. I'll talk about 5-MeO-DMT later. I'm interested in the vast difference you described. Why did you particularly choose MDMA as opposed to LSD? So I mentioned this before, but I didn't choose the substance. I let the guide choose the substance. And they said that where I'm at, what I'm going through, what I'm looking at, that this was the right substance for this journey. And I said, fine. I, I offered my unexpert opinion and said, well, if I were to do this, and they're like, cool. No, which is great. And so, I was mentioning at some point I began to dialogue. They would ask questions, the guide would ask questions, and I would sort of respond. But at some point it became a dialogue between these different parts. And the part that was vulnerable would say, like help, somebody help, somebody help. That was actually a lot of the internal dialogue before I started speaking outside, was this letting this part just scream for help, just yell, please help. And I think part of it is that the substance allows a little bit of mentalizing. The way when we use meditation, we go into a kind awareness, an overall awareness, so that it can actually be a little bit bigger than being stuck inside that one little piece. Because if we're really stuck and identified with that one piece, it can be, I could imagine that being horrifying, just being in that self and being like, help, help. But there was something about letting it do that and sort of having a larger context for it, giving it the space to do that was very helpful. And then I started letting the different selves dialogue, just like we did today in the guided meditation. And that dialogue was incredibly fruitful. And at some point, this is very personal. I hope everyone knows that this is not like inherently like, oh, it's so easy for me to talk about. It's like, it is definitely, this is definitely personal. So at some point I, asked Raquel to assure me that she loves me. Like, Raquel's holding my hand. She's been there for hours. Like, that's one of the things that was like interesting, because I realized some part of me couldn't hear it. Like, when she says it to me, there's some part that's like, no. And I think it was that vulnerable part. And so I just said, could you reassure me? And she said, I love you so much. And I could tell part of me could take that in, but another part couldn't. And I was like, oh, this is very valuable. This is actually very, very, this is a very helpful direction. So I started exploring that particular part and speaking out loud. I was speaking to Raquel, my eyes were covered, and I was like, holding hands, this kind of thing. And I said, this part of me that can't hear that, could you say it again? And so I prompted Raquel to say this again. She says it again. And I could detect this part pushing it away. And so I started talking to that part and saying, like, hey, I understand that this is scary for you. That must be really painful, because it sounds like you want love, you want support, you want kindness, but it's scary. And then I'd let that self-talk, and it says, yeah, it's scary. If I let someone love me, then I'm going to get hurt. Because this is a lot of my experience as a child, that people would be there, and I would let them in, and there'd be people who were there, and then they would be gone. And I'd be like, literally alone, like, where is everybody? Or they would be, there was sort of the abuse happening in the family when I was very young, and and it'd be like, where are they? Why aren't they here? So there's that self that felt that was the case, that love is very hard to take in that way. It's not, love itself is not safe. And then there was there's an experience, I just had contact with it for a second and I lost it verbally. I experienced that love isn't safe. So I'm sure it'll come back. So that was basically it. And there was a dialogue that was happening between myself and Raquel, a dialogue that was happening between these different parts. And then something cracked, which I thought was quite interesting, that the vulnerable self was sort of very hurt and angry at the self that was like, you're not worthy, just stop being, stop existing, I don't like you, this kind of thing, that part. And I was like, why are you doing that to me? Like, why are you being unkind to me? And this is the thing I was going to say a moment ago. This is really, this is very personal, very painful. But there was some part of me, and I think this is a significant sort of cultivation, or something that had been growing, or something that had been nurtured for a long time within me, that felt like I must have deserved to be treated poorly. I must have, because why else would this occur? It must be something about me. And this is kind of, it sounds, when I say it, it sounds like standard sort of, kind of the delusion that'll come from a child who doesn't know any better. But there's something very experiential about this that's not just like a theory. This is very much, hits hard in the body. So it's that there must be something fundamentally just flawed, because that's the only reason people would treat me like this, or there would be this kind of abuse, or that I would have this, that people would ignore me when I asked for help, or that I would, literally be shouting for help, or someone to whatever, and no one would come. There must be some, like, there's a reason for that, and the reason must be me. And so that's what that part was indicating, like, why would you treat me like this other part? Because I think that's something important to remember, that if we have these parts, often there's an oppositional part that's internalized that external experience. So there's a part of me that's like, you vulnerable part, you're stupid, just stop existing. It's internalized that sort of that tension. So the vulnerable part was sitting there going like, why would you treat me like that? It's unfair. Like, it's so mean. Like, why are you trying to hurt me? Why are you ignoring me? Why are you, why do you try to push me down? And that part was sort of saying back, it's like, well, I have, this dialogue going back and forth. And eventually I recognize, and this is sort of a little bit zoomed out, I recognize, oh, wait a minute, this harsh, pushing part, it's doing it out of kindness. It's doing it out of care. It's trying to keep me safe. It's trying to make it's trying to make there be less pain. And I realized, it's like, oh my God, that's so kind. That's so loving. That's so considerate and thoughtful. And it's been so vigilant. It's been doing this for like most of my life, pushing against this thing. I was shocked, and I was like, oh my God, that's so kind that you would care for me in that way. And it's really poor execution, dude. And oh, right, you're trying to protect. You're a protector self. And so there's some sort of connection with the kindness that was involved in that. And then I called in, sort of unintentionally, but so something came in, was this protector figure, someone who just felt very loving, and sort of someone I wanted to, who I've looked to in the past as a protector. And there was this sense that they were so loving and so caring. And so it was a lot of movement around these different parts, and then navigating these different bits and pieces. And in the end, what came down was this sense of that there is love. There's love from my wife, Raquel. There's love and care from this nurturing guide. There's the part of me that feels vulnerable and wants to be loved, and feels like it's worthy of being loved, and is confused as to why, the universe would, fight against it or push against it, or there'd be this other self, or, other beings that would push against its worthiness of having love. And then there's this other part that was trying its best to provide safety, but it was doing it in a very sort of misguided way. So even it was caring. And I sort of found this through thread of care and compassion. So that was sort of the general breakdown of, what happened on the journey. The guide took a lot of notes. I'm going to read those later, so I'm sure there's more there to it. But those are the general breakdowns. Do folks have particular questions about that experience? If they want to, drop that in the chat right now, and I can talk about specifics or anything I missed in that experience. And that was generally it. And that was very recently. That was just yesterday that happened. And so the meditation that we did today was focused on that, finding, and for me, it was those specific parts. It was the vulnerable part. It's the part that pushes back, and ideally recognizing that the motives of both of these parts is to keep me safe and to navigate those experientially as a body experience. And that's the last thing that I'll mention, was that there did seem to be some sort of opposition or push and pull, between the head and the body, and that the head sort of was like, in a way, rationalizing and I don't know about that, and the body just had a lot more clarity as to these different tensions, pushing and pulling. So that is generally how that went down. Let's see here. David says, I've got to go, but thank you so much for sharing your intense personal experience. Really insightful, interesting, and helpful. I'll just say real quick about sharing. I'm surprised at my level of willingness to talk about this stuff. And I think it's partially because that vulnerable sort of not good enough part is actually feeling more safe, feeling more held, feeling more secure, feeling more like cared for, making it possible for me to sort of say stuff that normally I'd be like, I can't say that. I can't tell people that there's a part of me that feels shame and alienation and etc. And actually realizing that these are really normal human experiences. And if you have these experiences, just from me, I'll say that, I care about you. We may never meet, we may never even chat, but I care about you. And I think that, I know this sounds so cheesy, God, what I'm saying, but I think you're highly deserving of care and compassion and of a life that's free of suffering. So that is the reason why I encourage folks to dive into the meditative path dramatically, because that is, for me, that's the whole engine. The substances are a nice addition, but I remember actually for a lot of the time there, that she was asking me, like, how are you doing? Like, what degree of altered do you feel? And I was like, this just feels like meditation. This feels like a normal, guided meditation for me. It doesn't feel that altered. And she just said a number of times, check in with the body, ask the body, ask the body. So that was, that's generally what the situation was. So again, meditation, I truly think that it's the way to go. If you're wanting to get into these kind of transformational experiences, get into significant meditation, and that's going to carry you a lot further than any particular substance might. If you're watching this on playback, just know that the entire guided meditation will be available in a link that's popping up. I think it's going to pop up here, and it's also going to be in the description below. So if you want to do the guided meditation that we just talked about, feel free to jump to that. Thank you so much for watching, and if you are watching this on playback, hey, what do you know? Hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button, and then I'll know. And ask any questions at all you have down below, and I'll be sure to jump over to those. Folks who are watching the live stream live with us right here, right now, let's get to some more of these questions. Oh, we have a new follow here from Beautiful Silver Hair. That's so cute. Like a little boop, boop, boop. Little hair. That's cute. Beautiful silver hair. Okay. Nate says, so you said that sounds a lot like MDMA. Yeah, I mean, I think that the some of it does. Some of it just didn't feel like it. It just felt like something very different experientially. It's also been, 15 years since I've used any kind of substance like that. So 16 or so years. Okay, so Nate says, so that self that is really hard on you, that you came to conclude was actually protecting you, maybe unskillfully. Where is it now? I can attend to that experience now. I can attend to that self. It's pretty abstract. I mean, it's sort of like a pressure in the side of my head. It's sort of a position in a way. It's like a view of reality from its own perspective. It's much, much kinder. This significant little add-on here I want to mention. After the journey, I went on a walk with my dog. And one of the things I found recently, and I knew that this was definitely related to my childhood, I knew it was definitely related to all this material I'm going through, but I would get so frustrated with the dog. I would be like, oh my God, like I can't believe this is so, like, why are you doing this? And I realized yesterday that a lot of what it was is this feeling of, I can't believe you would not listen to me. Again, I know there's a distortion here. I can't believe you would not listen to me when I'm clearly telling you what I need from you. I'm telling you, please stop barking at these people, or, please don't pee in the hallway again. I'm saying it so clearly, but you just aren't listening. So it's this existential feeling of like, why won't you listen to me? And yet that part that was like harsh and would be harsh to the dog and angry or this kind of thing, anger would arise. That part was so gentle and like recognizing, okay, cool. Like this isn't like, I knew when it came up in the past, like doesn't belong to the dog or something like that. But still it would arise. And I was just dramatically patient with the dog. We took an incredibly long walk, which we usually don't with a dog. And because we're training it to not pull on the leash. And so the walk was like 3 times as long as it would normally be, because it would pull and I'd be like, nope. And I'd stop. And as soon as it would like on this, I'd be like, yes, and like give it a treat and then walk. And it immediately, as soon as it gets the treat, it forgets all training and just like runs forward. And so I'd be like, nope, okay, back? Yes, over and over and over and over again. And it finally sunk in, and the dog was really just like, okay, cool, and could listen. But a lot of it was that there wasn't a need for the dog to be something other than it was. So that need for that part of me to be something other than it was, I think, was dramatically reduced. And so that was not externalized as much anymore. Nate says, how do you feel about it now? Or how does it feel for you now? I think I answered that. In the present moment, off Molly. I mean, yeah, that's generally what I would say is that harsh part is, I mean, I relate to it as being very kind. It's like, oh, what a thoughtful, kind, misguided, it's sort of like there's something very sweet about it being so misguided. It's like, well, like, I'm going to fight the world to try to protect you. It's like, that's so sweet. You're such a fool, but it's okay. Jamler says, how would you describe the level of love you experience in comparison to mystical states of experiencing love, or was it more personal, human? I'd say they're identical, honestly. It feels like one thing. So for me, the experience of emptiness in meditation is on its own, or at least the way that I cultivated it, is extremely neutral. It's the way that I describe it. It feels like a sheet of glass falling from the sky. Like, it's just empty. It's just like, it doesn't care. There's no like, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, I'm going to shatter. Yeah, there's a sky. It's beautiful. I don't care. I couldn't care less. And that's the kind of equanimity that I had most contact with. My emptiness was empty of care. And so what I've had to do over time is cultivate that kind awareness versus the sort of brutal, neutral awareness that just like doesn't care about anyone or anything. And I encourage that because it can be very isolating and very alienating to have a really cold awareness. And, Mahasi Sayadaw, actually, and the type of meditation that I do, which is the metta mind state practice, which is really cultivating this kind of awareness, comes from Mahasi. And people think like, oh, Mahasi just have you, meditate all the time, like nonstop. But that's actually more Upandita, or meditate doing Vipassana nonstop. Mahasi had people do 3 months of, rather, he'd have people do 2 months of metta practice followed by 3 months of Vipassana practice. So when people went into that really intensive 3 months of Vipassana practice, they'd go in with this soft, kind, loving sort of heart mind and then approach it from there. So when people have these intense dark night experiences based on like, I just pushed and pushed, it's like, that's not what your sort of, uber guru suggests, actually. This sort of, grand teacher of many people who we know actually suggested a lot more heart practice than we usually give them credit for. So Nate says, the frustration and harshness to your dog is exactly how I feel in connection with my kids. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Listen, a dog is in many ways a micro version of what people experience with their kids. When our dog arrived, it caused like tension between me and Raquel. It felt like suddenly, like, what happened to our relationship that was so stable, and suddenly there's this other being. We constantly have to pay attention to it, and we have to care for it. But I enjoyed like the relationship we had before. Like, these are all standard things that happen in marriages when a child is introduced. However, the only difference being it's a tiny, teeny version. We don't have to care for it all the time. We don't actually have to, it's much simpler and much less sort of care. So that's totally understandable. I totally understand that. Veritable Vagabond says, how do you get in touch with a guide? Okay. So I can't be like, here's their number. We're trying to come up with a system. So if anyone is watching this and is like, no, I want to know about this. Geez. All right. Well, basically just stay in touch and keep asking the question, because we want to come up with a system by which we can recommend people. I don't know if there is a clearinghouse. It also depends on which coast you're on. There's a lot more guides in this realm on the west coast of the United States than the east coast. There are a few international. Beep, boop, boop, beep, 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 beep. Yeah. Right now, I'm going to put a pin in that one. That's a great question, but I don't have a system by which I could answer that, because they ask, don't be like telling people who we are. Don't put people in touch with us. It's very like person to person. It has to be right now because we're dealing with illegal substances. Jamila says, cool insight. I enjoy doing metta practice, yet it's not easy personally to maintain kind awareness. Thank you for your answer. Yeah, it's just something you can cultivate. In the same way you can cultivate concentration, in the same way you can cultivate a connection with awareness, you can cultivate that kind awareness. So Nate says, it's not a bad thing. Sorry. Don't be sorry about that. It's a wonderful realization to see where it's coming from. That it's not just, damn, Nate, you're a real jerk. That it comes from love. Yeah, and know that typically when there's some part of us that we don't like, there's a part that doesn't like it. And so we have to begin to negotiate and let these parts talk to each other. And if you look at the multiple self model guided meditations that are on our second YouTube channel, which is, hey, I'm typing here. Oh, that was the wrong thing, the wrong link. That link literally doesn't work, so don't even bother. It's this. It's 2 at the end, not 1. If you look there's a playlist called the Multiple Self Model, and that is how to train that conversation around how to get those 2 to converse, which you should be familiar with, Nate. I know you've done a lot of this work with me in particular, but if anyone else is interested in learning how to get those parts and train them to be able to dialogue, those are some guided meditations there. And I think the meditation we did today, I'm actually going to include in that series because I think it's a nice add-on, or maybe I'll do another version of it because that was so specific. Okay. Veritable Vagabond says, interesting. I assumed they were trained or certified. They are trained. They are trained, and I don't know about certification because, again, I don't think that they're certified. There is a certification, but they're certified. The certification does not indicate that they're basically on paper. They're just studying how one might do this, because that's all that they should put down on paper. But they are certified in this quite a bit. They do quite a bit of training, the guides. Also, if there's someone who is a shaman in your area, or you can travel to places where there are shamans, they'll also guide you through a lot of this kind of thing. It's Veritable Vagabond. It can't be public because a lot of these medicines, they're on their way to be approved because, in part, a lot of the work that's done by an organization named MAPS, so the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies. If you want to, help the movement of this to move forward towards towards it being legal and being a medicine and a set of treatments for everyone. If somebody wants to put the MAPS website there, go there, donate, because they're doing real work, working with the lawmakers and the land to make this stuff be legal and available as treatment. So if that's something that's important to you, then I encourage you to support in that way. It's important to me. So folks, it was lovely to be here with you. Thank you so much for letting me share my personal journey. It was a delight. It was difficult, challenging in a way, but this much easier, I think, than had I not done the work. It would be much harder to talk about the work on several levels. Yeah. So lovely, folks. So I have a wish. I have a magical wish for you. So my wish for you is that you simply are able to notice whatever part of you feels like it's maybe less worthy, less valuable, the part you wish were a little less active or had less impact in your life. And recognize that part is vulnerable and needs your care. And also to recognize that the part of you that doesn't like that part, the part of you that says, get away from me. You're a jerk. You're annoying. You're the one that's alienated and isolated. If you were gone, then I'd finally be free. Just notice that part too, although unskillfully, is also there to be kind, to support. Folks, as we begin to slide our way into the ether, that is my wish for you, that you're able to connect with those parts. Now, I also want to let you know, not only do we have a retreat coming up in just a few days, actually this coming Saturday. Damn. retreat this Saturday, y'all. But also, we're back here on the live stream in fewer than 48 hours. Fewer than 48 hours, we will be back here to chit-chat like kitty cats. Folks, lovely to see you. Please have a lovely day. Support each other, be kind. I look forward to seeing everyone very soon.